Here we go. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Good morning to you, Tasneem. Welcome to Talk to Me Africa. You are my first time guest, and I'm so excited and glad and happy that you could make the time to join me today. Welcome to Talk to Me Africa.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Let me let my audience know where you're joining me from Canada, Vancouver.
Yes,
You're my
Vancouver.
second Canadian guest in a row.
Wonderful. It's a beautiful city. Rains a lot, but it's green, mountains, everything you need in
Mhm.
nature.
I would take that over the snow that I see sometimes. So welcome. So let my audience know who you are. I hope I say your name right. Tasneem Damji.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good. So Tasneem, you are an academic and career coach who enjoys helping parents of high school and teens navigate the college application process with clarity, calm, and confidence. I like those three words: clarity, calm, and confidence, because sometimes I feel a simple application, I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. So
Right,
clarity,
exactly.
calm,
That's
and
really
confidence.
what I
Very
want to
good.
do is, yeah.
Yeah.
And remove confusion, I
And
think.
remove confusion. That's right. And I
Yeah.
must say, you do say that preparing for a life after high school comes with a feeling of doubt, anxiety, and sometimes stress from both the student and their parents or their guardians. This is where you come in as an academic
Mhm.
coach to
Yeah,
help everyone involved navigate that process very smoothly. I admire what you do. Thank you for making the time to
thank
be
you.
here today.
My pleasure.
So let's get to know you a little bit. First of all, is there a fun fact about yourself that people don't know?
You know what? There's a couple, but I'll tell you one.
Mhm.
I have traveled and lived in some of all of the stands of the former Soviet Union.
Wow, that
And
is a
yeah,
good one.
I'll name them because they're probably not familiar to most people.
Hmm.
The first time I went in that region was in Turkmenistan in the late 90s. I have lived in Tajikistan for 8.5 years. I have been to Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan.
Wow. So I'm very curious. Is that where you're originally from in that area though?
No, no, I am not actually. My great grandparents from India, and my parents and grandparents are from East Africa, from Kenya and Tanzania.
You're very adventurous. I like that. You explore.
Well, it has really shaped my life, and I think we'll talk about some of
Yeah.
that today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So I did read on your website that through your travels in Africa, Asia, and Central Asia and Middle East, Latin America, Eastern Europe, and North America, you've met so many young adults struggling to know themselves. And you have learned that this is a universal experience. Throw
Hmm.
some more light on that.
Yeah, I mean, this was me as well, many, many years ago, decades ago,
Hmm. Hmm.
not knowing what I was interested in, not knowing how to figure that out,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
When I was, finishing high school, nobody asked me what I was interested in. This was in
Hmm.
the early 90s. But what I'm noticing around the world with students and families that I work with
Hmm.
is, um, young people not knowing what they're interested in doing.
Hmm.
Um, and this is where the parents come in because parents are such a big influence in this area.
Hmm.
Um, Parents, we all parent the way either we were parented or the way we want, we don't want to parent the way our parents parented. Parenting is a really the hardest job in the world. I have a 16-year-old and an almost 8-year-old, and it is challenging. And so parents are finding it confusing and not sure what to do. And, many of us grew up with expectations,
Hmm.
with pressures,
Yeah.
and especially when we are an immigrant family or
Yes.
education is such a big thing that we want to give to our kids, which is great. Unfortunately, we put a lot of pressure on our kids,
We
and
do.
that can be, very consciously saying things and unconsciously.
That's really
I might
true.
say something like, "Oh, your cousin studied this, or look, she's going into university, or she got into this university. That automatically puts pressure. So that pressure in different ways is happening all around the world,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I would say that is a common feature amongst young people around the world is the lack of confidence in who they are,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Feeling like there's nothing interesting about them, right?
Mm,
And
mm-hmm.
when they are applying to colleges, they do need to talk about themselves. And when they're not feeling confident in who they are, and they're not feeling like anything is interesting about them, that becomes really challenging. And when I
Mm-hmm.
work with students, I always find things that are interesting about them. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's a big part of what I do. And I see this with all my students,
It's all
that
your
lack of
students,
confidence
no matter where they come from.
no
Yeah.
matter where they come
Yeah.
from. And then the last thing I would say that is similar to all the students is students are usually doing their application in grade 12, at the
Mm,
beginning of grade 12. They might have, looked at schools and or identified some schools they want to apply to.
mm.
But really, when the rubber hits the road, that's when they start applying.
Yes, yes.
Stressful because grade 12 is stressful. Grade 12 also comes with, a lot of celebrations and things. You want to have fun in your
Mm-hmm.
last year of high
Mm-hmm.
school. There are a lot of responsibilities. Students might be working, they might be taking leadership roles in different activities.
Mm,
And then on top of this, to add the university
yeah,
application process,
yeah,
um, becomes one where I find students are like, I just want to get it over with and do it.
yeah,
And they're
yeah.
not excited anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
so those are the common things that I find all around the world.
All around the world, yeah. Now let's talk about your own personal story about navigating the academic admission system after you completed, your graduate studies in 2001. You did talk about how you struggled. So how did you go
Mhm.
through that? And is that what made you to start such an academic coaching um business to help people?
Yeah, it was never something I planned, but
Mm.
the story I will tell you, the threads really link to each other. So
Mm-hmm.
when I finished high school, I actually
Mm-hmm.
lived in the US when I finished high school.
Okay.
I was in Dallas, Texas. I did
Mm-hmm.
my middle school and high school there. And I was a very strong academic student. And there was this assumption that I will go to university and I will study sciences and I'll become a doctor. I
There
am
you
sure
go.
there are many, many parents online that are feeling the same way, right? Either for themselves or what they want for their kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I did. I did go to university. I studied sciences. I went to university here in Canada,
Okay.
and I did not like it. I did
Okay.
not like it. I didn't like my courses. I didn't do well in my courses. In fact, I actually failed a required science course. Um, the only two classes I liked in all 4 years, I still did it for 4 years because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't think I could change. I thought maybe it's too hard.
Yeah.
Maybe I will disappoint people. But the only two classes I really enjoyed were anthropology and psychology.
Wow.
They'll make total sense to me years later, right?
Yeah, in your travels and discovering places. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Hmm.
interacting with different people. So, anyways, I finished the 4 years and I thought, no, I do not want to be a doctor. First of all, I don't even have the grades to be a doctor. And I need to figure this out. And so I ended up just going to a panel discussion and someone talked about volunteering abroad. And I thought, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. And, I reached out to some people, and the only person who responded was someone in Pakistan who said, come on over and volunteer. I had never been to Pakistan. I
Yeah.
didn't know the language. I didn't know anyone there. I don't have family there, but I was young and I was determined, right? And so nothing could scare me at that
Hmm.
time. And I went and I ended up there were lots of ups and downs. What I
Mm-hmm.
went for, didn't end up working out the way I wanted. But I met someone who
Mm-hmm.
was doing a public health school education program
Mm-hmm.
in Karachi, Pakistan. And she asked me if I wanted to join her, and I said, sure. And we ended up working in various school settings, public schools, private schools, community-based schools where there were a lot of refugees from Afghanistan,
Mm-hmm.
slum area schools. And our purpose was to help integrate health into the curriculum. So
Mm-hmm.
when maybe they were doing an English class, they could talk about a health issue, or they were doing math, they could count oranges and apples, right? And I loved it. I loved doing this kind of work. And that's where I started getting interested in public health.
Wow.
So I stayed for a year and a half and I came back to Vancouver and I applied to public health programs and specifically programs that had an internship
Mm-hmm.
possibility and programs that had an international focus. So I
Mm-hmm.
did a degree in public health focused on population and family health with refugees and
Mm-hmm.
displaced people. And
Wow.
I ended up going to Columbia University in the US and did that in New York and did an internship one summer in a refugee camp in Bosnia-Herzegovina.
No
Um,
way.
and then I finished my degree and I went to do an internship in Tajikistan, a place again I had never been to. I had met a family when I lived in Pakistan. I lived with a family from Tajikistan. And I went there to support public health programs. And while I was there working for a nonprofit organization, I made
Mm-hmm.
a number of friends who were colleagues of mine and around my age. And they said, we want to apply to universities abroad.
Okay.
That we're thinking about the US. And they were like, but we don't know how to do it. This was in 2001, 2002. And I was
Mm-hmm.
living in a very remote mountainous region of the country, and we didn't have internet at the time.
Yeah.
And they were like, we don't know how to do this. So I said, well, okay, I've studied, at the undergraduate and graduate level. I'll share what I can share. And I would spend, evenings and weekends working with them. It's so long ago, I honestly can't even remember what I did with them. But I came back. I lived there for 3.5 years and I came back to Canada. I worked here at a university and then years later, I moved back to Tajikistan. And it was probably about 10 or so years later, I learned that some of those people that I helped actually did go study abroad. They went to
Wow.
their bachelor's degrees, their master's degrees, and PhDs. And I thought, oh, wow, okay, this is
Mm-hmm.
interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
now there was internet in Tajikistan. More students were wanting to study abroad. There were
Abroad. Yeah.
scholarships available. And that's how I got into this kind of work.
What a beautiful adventure that landed you, at a place that is so helpful to other people. So now looking
Mhm.
at students in high school, right? Is there a to-do list that
Mm.
high school students who would like to pursue college education should start putting together? My son is in ninth grade, high school, right? Yeah, he knows what he wants to do. He says he wants to do football analysis. So if you check on my Facebook page, it's called JJ Vikings. He's had his own share of stardom with the teams and talking to stars and being invited to games. And he's got scouted by a couple of colleges that would want him to come study, broadcasting and do sports analysis. But I'm like, okay, that's fine. You do that. But we don't know if it's going to lead to that at the end of the day. Because
Mhm.
like you did, you changed your course and look at where you are today. So is it something we can start doing in high school, putting a to-do list together?
Mm.
And is that to-do list has to do with academics only, or maybe I want to leave out of the country for a year. Maybe I want to apply to schools and just see what happens, or take a year of what lists should high school students are putting together as they look towards graduation and maybe going to college?
Yeah. Oh my God, we could talk about this all day,
I can
but I
imagine.
try to summarize this because I think you brought up so many things. Um,
Hmm.
and I think parents listening to what you just said might be like, oh my God, there is so much to think about, right? And it can
Yeah.
feel so overwhelming in addition to all the other things parents are have stresses about, like
Hmm.
legitimate stresses about.
Yeah.
And so I think what I want to do here is really, and what I do in my work is make
Hmm.
it less complicated,
Yes.
as much as possible. I do understand parents because, I do this with my students who I don't know, right? So I'm this
Hmm.
outsider who can help them. They think
Yeah.
I'm not their parent. But I have a kid in grade 11 right now,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And grade 11 now in January feels closer to grade 12 than it did in September,
Right.
right?
Right.
And as a parent, you are so much more invested in your kid than I am. I'm invested in my students as a coach, but not that personal connection and that
Hmm.
emotional connection. So
Hmm.
I get what parents are feeling. To make it less complicated, and I know in the US it's different than in Canada. In the US, it's very much, there's a lot of pressures in the schools. It's very
Hmm.
much, okay, start thinking about colleges you want to apply to when you're in your freshman year.
Hmm.
Start going to go see colleges, all those kinds of things. And yes, you can do that, but I don't think you need to do that.
Mm.
So this is what I would say to focus on at the beginning of high school, in the first 2 years of high school,
Mm.
is obviously take the right courses, right? And the
Mm.
school counselors help with that. Um, do as well as you can. I'm not a fan of pressuring students to get straight A's.
Neither am
Um,
I. Yeah.
because that is not all about that. That doesn't make who they are.
Yeah,
There's
it
so many
doesn't. Yeah.
of their life, but help them develop some good study habits, get help from teachers,
Hmm.
and do the best that they can given
Hmm.
their own abilities. And I think
Hmm.
that's what parents can help with. Have a
Hmm.
really good communication with the school, with the counselors, and help them do the best that they can do.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's for academics.
Yeah.
The other really important part is to get involved in some extracurricular activities.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, you know, Sometimes there might be certain things you're interested in, like your son with football, and sometimes there are things you're not really sure are you interested, but you want to
Yeah.
try and explore. So do both of those things. It is a really good time to explore. And when
Yeah.
I talk about extracurriculars, there are structured extracurricular activities
Hmm.
like sports, music, clubs, Model UN,
Some camps, maybe, where you have
yeah,
some activities. Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
But there's also unstructured
Hmm.
extracurricular activities. Not everyone has the opportunity because they come at a cost for many of those
They
things,
do. Yeah.
and they can be quite expensive. So not everyone has the opportunity to be part of a football team or
Hmm.
to, go to these camps that cost money. But equally important are other things that don't cost money, like um, many young people are responsible for taking care of their younger
You,
siblings,
yeah. Hmm.
right? Because maybe their parents are working, so they need to come home, maybe make a snack, help them with their homework,
Hmm.
get them ready for bed, have dinner, those kinds of things. Those are equally important
Hmm.
to the football teams
Hmm.
and the band, right?
Hmm.
Um, Maybe they are working, right? And so they need to, that's really important. Maybe they have a hobby that they love to
Hmm.
write,
Yeah.
and that's equally important. So really getting involved in those kinds of extracurriculars, ones that you're interested in and ones that you want to explore.
Hmm.
Um, while you're in high school and,
Hmm.
as you get older, you start to figure out what you want to stay with, right?
Hmm.
Um, do those things on a longer term basis, you know? So if sports is your thing, if music is your thing, continue that for the rest of your high school journey,
Hmm.
right? Because doing something that you like and you do for a long time shows passion,
That's
shows
right.
uh, you know,
Commitment.
commitment,
Mhm.
exactly.
Mhm.
And so those would be the things I would say to do after while you're doing those things. And this is, you know, while the kid is doing those things, parents can help them kind of start thinking about what are they learning in those
Mhm.
activities? What
Mhm.
skills are they gaining? So, for example, my son plays soccer. And he is on the school team, and they won a regional tournament, and then they
Mhm.
went to the provincial or state kind of tournament.
Yeah.
After that, I did a workshop with them. And the workshop was about getting them to articulate and reflect on what they've learned in the soccer season.
Mhm.
Not the technical skills, not those kinds of things, but what did they learn? And, you know, there's however many kids are on the team, they've all learned different things. They're playing
Yes.
the same sport, but they've
Mhm.
learned different things. So, for example, one of the players, he's a captain of the team. So he has a leadership role. So he talked about leadership. And what he identified, whether he had thought about this before or now, this was the time to articulate it and really think about it, was he learned that he needs to motivate his team.
Wow.
But each player on his team needs different kind of motivation. And he had to figure that out, you know, during the season. And I noticed when I would go to games, I would see him during the game. He was a defender during the game, so he could see a lot in
Mhm.
front
I
of
understand. So, okay. Yeah. Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And he could see a lot. You could hear him
Yeah.
encouraging his teammates, or you know, if they made a shot, it didn't go in, and he'd say, "That's okay, we'll get it next time." And you could hear him say their names on the
Mhm.
field.
Mhm.
That is something he has
Yeah.
learned,
Yeah.
right? And so really identifying those things because that will help later on when you're
Mhm.
writing your college application essays,
Mhm. Mhm.
when you are going for interviews, job interviews, or other
Mhm.
kinds of interviews. These things are going to help. So that's kind of where I would start, right? And then when you're in grade 11,
Mhm.
is to start thinking about you know what you want to pursue
Mhm.
in college, if you're leaning towards that, right? And this would be my biggest tip here
Mhm.
is you are planning your next step. You're not planning your whole future, as I
Mhm.
talked about in my story, and I'm sure, and I know your story is also like that.
Mhm.
You can't plan your future.
Mhm.
None of us can. We've moved in and out of different kinds of roles,
Mhm.
some that are similar to each other and some that
Yeah.
have nothing to do with each other, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Depending on opportunities that came, depending on needs, you know, we needed to find a job, even
Mhm.
though it's not in our field, but we need to feed our families.
Yeah.
We cannot plan our future. And so why are we expecting these 17 and 18-year-olds to plan their future,
Yeah.
right? So it's about thinking about next steps.
Yeah, I like that. It makes it sound so gentle because sometimes the pressure comes from the parents as well. You have to be a doctor. From an African perspective, if you have a child who is a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, some kind of public servant, like a minister of the government, something, then you are that parent who made it. Your
Mhm.
child made it. So sometimes I feel like the parents are pressuring the kids to plan their future instead of helping them to plan the next step. So I
Yeah.
can see how working with you would take off the pressure, even from the parents themselves, and
Mhm.
especially from the students who face such pressure from their parents. And now let's go to the parents. Is there a
Mhm.
to-do list that the parents have to put together as they see their children go through high school and potentially to college?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to change your mindset.
I agree.
You know, that's
Don't think, yeah, you're gonna
huge.
be. So my son wants to do broadcasting, not to cut you short, but people who know me, they go, "Oh, he's following your footsteps." Did you? I'm like, I had nothing to do with this. First of all, he talks about American football. I don't understand what he talks about. This kid interviews football players, and I just like, okay, I can just tell him this is how you position yourself, or you raise your voice, or you intonate your questions. But I don't understand the game that he's talking about. So I had
Hmm.
nothing to do with that decision. So
Hmm.
what should we parents do? Take your hands off? What is that to do? What is our job here?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
such a good question. I mean, parenting is the hardest job, right? And there's no manual, there's no one right way to do it or wrong
Mm,
way to do it, right? And we are just trying it out, right? We're
mm,
figuring it out. There is this delicate balance
mm,
of encouraging,
mhm,
not pressuring, but
mhm,
encouraging and letting them be independent and
mhm,
figure things out,
mm,
right?
mm, mm,
I
mm,
can't say that I have figured that out myself,
mm.
right? And with multiple kids, they're all so different, even if
Different,
they come from the
yes,
same
yes.
families. So there is this balance, right? Of how do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
I think for parents, it's really important to have the mindset that this is not about you. You know,
Mm,
in the story you mentioned, you talked about when African kids become doctors or
mm-hmm,
these other professions,
mm-hmm.
it means the parents have made it, right?
The
So
parent entered title, they call you mama doctor, papa lawyer, like you're the father of a lawyer, like you lose your own name. They look forward to
yes.
such titles.
Right. And so then it becomes all about you. And I get it. I mean, you want to feel proud of your kid. You want others to see that you've done a good job, right? But there's other ways as well, right? Being a doctor is great. Being a car mechanic who loves his job and helps
Even better.
people
Yeah.
with something that they don't know how to do is amazing as well. And so I think really listening to your kid,
Mm-hmm.
listening to and observing, what have you observed that they enjoy, I see right now, even my daughter who's almost 8, she loves art. She
Mm-hmm.
loves gymnastics, and so at a young age, I'm not putting her even in things she's not going to want to play soccer. She hates going to her brother's soccer games. But I saw, for example, that she loves playing on the playground and doing the monkey bar. She didn't start off that way, but the more she practiced, she loved it. So then this year, I put her in gymnastics
Look at
because I
that.
saw
You
that,
saw
right?
that. Yeah.
The parents need to be observing their kids, and even in high school, what
Mm-hmm.
are they? We know our kids' strengths, right? We
Mm-hmm.
know what they're not good at, but what they like to do. And so encourage them and put them in activities
Mm-hmm.
that allow them to, practice those things. There comes a time also where they're still young. They don't know everything, right? And so sometimes, I'll give an example of my son. Like I said, he loves soccer, right? If he
Mm-hmm.
could play soccer all the time, he would. I mean, he woke up early on New Year's Day and was at the soccer field at 10 in the morning. But to wake him up for school is a huge challenge, right? So, soccer is one thing. He plays soccer, he plays on his club team and his school team. There are other opportunities to be involved in soccer in different ways. And so with his club, they have a program for student kids who are physically and mentally challenged. And so they need soccer support in different
Mm-hmm.
ways. They don't play
Mm-hmm.
the same way, they're not able to, and they need that one-on-one kind of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
There was a call out for volunteers in the team in the club to volunteer once a week and help students with various challenges. And I mentioned that to my son. He didn't seem really,
Mm-hmm.
too interested. And I said, you know what? This is such a great way to help others,
Mm-hmm.
right? And also to see, like, if you want to continue in soccer and maybe you want to be coaching later on,
Yeah.
see and get that experience that not everyone is able to play in the way that you play. They need
Mm-hmm.
different kinds of supports. And so he has been doing it. So sometimes we kind of have to, I kind of got registered him for it, but I registered him for something that he enjoys, which is soccer.
Yes,
I
yes,
didn't register
yes.
him for something he doesn't enjoy, but I
Mm-hmm.
also knew that it's not just about playing soccer.
Mm-hmm.
It- you can help others as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think parents need to identify what are these things that our kids are interested in.
Yeah.
I will tell another story. My son is talented in many things, and one
Mm-hmm.
of them was singing. When he
Oh,
was younger, he would join all the talent shows at school, in elementary school and whatnot. And I think he could have continued, but he didn't.
yeah.
And I listened to The Voice a lot because I feel like he could have been on that show. But I had to let that go,
That's your
right?
dream now, not his dream, right? Which is what some
Exactly.
parents do. We dream for our kids.
Exactly. And I had to let that go. I do know that my son doesn't want to play professional soccer because I've asked him this, because if he did, then he kind of have to start looking at that, in
Mm-hmm.
grade 10 or so. Um, and he said, no, I don't want to because I want to continue enjoying the game. So that I know that, and now we can kind of move forward in other areas. So for parents, their to-do list, and the biggest one, I'm not going to give a number of things to do, is to really listen to your kids,
Yes.
observe your kids, and see what are they interested in, and find those opportunities for
I
them.
love that. Sit back and listen.
Mhm.
I tell you, like, just like my son, he doesn't want to play the game. He wants to talk about the game, which is what he does. People be like, oh, you want to play? I'm like, no, no, he doesn't want to play. He understands the dangers of the game and he enjoys watching and talking about the game. And so people would always think that that's not the right route to go. Make him play. I'm like, I'm not going to register him in some game he doesn't want to play. Let him do what he wants to do. And so I
Yeah.
like when you say there is a long to-do list of parents for parents, but it's important to just sit back,
Mhm.
observe, and direct your kids. All we can do is support them. You
Yeah.
and I can talk about the things we started as children, which did not take us anywhere. Just because at that time you were so interested in it, that didn't mean you were already a star in that particular activity. you know.
Right.
And now let's talk about the students that you coach. Are all your students headed to college? Finally, I'm asking because college is becoming so expensive as the days and the years go by. Have you
Mhm.
coached or do you coach students, young adults who don't want to go to college, but they find something else enjoyable in life?
Yeah, I love that question because that's the area I also want to work in.
Mm,
Um, but in a business, you first have to start with one thing,
that's
right?
right.
You've got to
That's right.
start with one thing, do it well, have
Mm-hmm.
it very solid before you move on to other things,
Mm,
right? And because I started with, in my story, helping students apply to college,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's my kind of signature thing that I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But things are changing now,
Yeah.
right? There are so many other opportunities
Mm-hmm.
that are equally great for students, in addition to college, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our students they learn differently,
Mm-hmm.
they want to do different things, and there are these opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, I am a big proponent
Mm-hmm.
of gap years.
Mm.
No, I took that gap year after university when I
Oh my
got 4
God.
years.
Everything I have heard my African immigrants say about gap year is bad. Why do
Yes.
you want to take a break? Why do you want to stop? Let me listen to you. Go ahead. I hope somebody catches this
Yeah,
as
you're right. And these are myths, There is the myth that, okay, my kid's going to take a gap year. They're going to sleep all day. They're going to wake up and try to figure out maybe what to do, or they're going to watch TV. That is not the kind of gap year I am talking about. I am
well.
talking about a structured gap year. We have our kids go to school for 12 years straight. in those 12 years, not a lot of it is under their control, or their decisions, they've got to take certain courses. Yes, later on they can take some electives, right? And they've got to do certain things and they've got to learn in a specific way.
Mhm.
So they've done this for 12 years, right? Many students are coming out of high school right now burnt out. We
Yeah,
never heard this before,
yeah.
right? They're coming out burnt out. And so that gap year, or however long it is, I promote a structured gap year where there's something that they do. And I love planning gap years with students. I
Mhm.
actually worked with a student who came to me to apply to college in art. And
Mhm.
we were working on his application. Now, his application required a portfolio of
Mhm.
his different designs, right?
Mhm.
And midway, we worked together for about a year. Midway, he realized, you know what?
Mm.
I don't think I can put this together right now in the way, art is not something that you force and
Yeah, it's
it's,
very abstract and you get
yeah,
into
and
that
you need
person.
time, right? You need
Mhm.
inspiration, right?
Mhm.
And so we moved, and his parents were very supportive of this, of looking at what a gap year could look like for him.
Mhm.
And in that gap year, he would work on his designs for his portfolio, but he would also work because he needed to make money to go to college, right?
Mhm.
And he would do some volunteer work in the area that he was interested in, right? So maybe teaching art to kids at a local community center,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? His mom was a teacher, going into the school and teaching art, right? And really exploring the different ways he could practice what he enjoyed, right? And so planning that gap year. My son, he will graduate next year,
Yeah.
and I am really encouraging him to take a gap year. And in that gap year, plan that out. And so this is where parents come in. How can they help their kids plan that gap year? And gap years can look so different for so many people. So,
Mhm.
for example, my son, uh, he is, so my husband is from Tajikistan.
Mhm.
And when my son was 3 years old, we moved from Canada to Tajikistan, and he lived there for 5 years. And then we moved back here. And I said, what if? And he has family there. He has his
Mhm.
grandparents there, aunts, uncles, cousins that he hasn't seen in a long time.
Mhm.
And I said, what if you take a break after high school and you go to Tajikistan? You spend time with your family, right?
Mhm.
Spend time in a place where you lived for 5 years, and you also do something,
Yes.
get some experience, meet people. And so we thought, okay, or I thought, because I've seen this when I've lived abroad.
Mhm.
One of the things that people are craving, especially in countries where English is not spoken, is people to have English conversations with
Look
them.
at that.
English conversations with native English speakers. And
Mhm.
so I said, there's so many organizations there that have clubs for young people. You could do an English conversation club
Hmm.
with teenagers and talk about, have a theme each time. So
Mhm.
maybe you talk about your favorite music, or you
Mhm.
talk about what you did on the weekend, and you have these conversations. He can do that as when he next year 17, doesn't need to have a lot of experience to do that,
Yeah.
right? What can he do at that time? Living away from responsibility, responsible to make it to those conversation clubs on time, interacting with
Mhm.
people from different backgrounds. Huge, you can't learn that in school.
Mhm.
You've got to actually do it, right? And a bonus, he gets to spend time with his family, which
Really? Yeah.
knows if when he will again as he
Time
is
to
here,
go there.
right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
a structured gap year, it could be working, right? working at, honestly, a really great place to work at where you don't need a lot of experience and you can grow in that role and develop responsibility, financial literacy, management experience is a place like McDonald's. They
Absolutely.
have a great program to help people, grow in that area.
Mhm.
One of the concerns that parents feel about gap years is that if my child is working, they
Mm.
won't want to go back to school.
Yeah, because they've started tasting some money. They're like, oh, this is it. But and they might think they have enough.
Oh, that's where I'm going with this. Who wants to work a minimum wage
Minimum
job for
wage all their
their
life.
lives? Because that's what they will be doing, right?
Yeah. Mm.
But I know many people who've done that and gone back to school when they've
Mhm.
met some people in the job or they talked to some people and now
Mhm.
they're inspired to do
Yeah.
something. Um, the other thing I would say is there is no one way to get
Mm-hmm.
to the same place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
I
um,
agree. I agree.
I recently I was at one of my son's soccer tournaments. And so there was a game in the morning and a game in the afternoon, but you had to stay there, right? Because you couldn't go back home and go. And one of his teammates, his grandmother, came to the game. And I was talking to the grandmother, and she was telling me
Mm.
how, when she finished high school, which was, a very different time, she got married soon after that and had kids, right? And
Mm.
so she didn't have the opportunity to go study or anything like that. And she was busy with her kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until she was about 40 that she decided she wanted to be a teacher. And she went to our university here in Canada, in Vancouver, and did a teacher program. She became an elementary school teacher. She had a 20-something year career in that area. Now, I'm not saying wait till you're 40, of
No, you're
course.
not
That was
saying
just
that.
a
Yeah.
very
Mm-hmm.
different time, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's just no one way of doing things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there's no, I know a lot of parents and students feel like there's a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
But, as we get older, we realize a year is nothing,
Mm-hmm.
right? We
Mm-hmm.
realize these things. And so there are different ways to get to the same
I
place.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Parents, please tell your kids a gap year is not a bad thing. And that to me has been my learning thing today, that a gap year is not a bad thing if you actually plan what to do with that gap year, because we don't know what these applications require. I'm getting into the applications right now into college. Let's get into college application because it's like they ask you to you get a degree in something. Let's say I have a degree in broadcasting and I go look for a job and they ask for experience. I don't have any experience. I think that gap year is helpful for that student to put together a beautiful example about the art. What have you
Mhm.
done? What is your portfolio? What can you present? And then you can come to our school. I love that. Again,
Yeah.
parents, the gap year is not a bad thing. Just plan it.
Yes.
Plan it. I love it. Now let's delve into college application, choosing a college. That is very confusing. To me, as an African immigrant, I'm sure to many thousands and millions of African immigrants and other immigrants in America, and even to native-born Americans themselves. There are too
Mhm.
many options out there, Tasneem, too many. How should a student narrow down their choice of what college to attend? What criteria should they use?
Yeah.
Sometimes colleges are scouting you. My son already got a couple of colleges scouting him to come study broadcasting. But how do you narrow down your choice, even
Yeah.
if you're scouted or not?
Yeah, exactly. No, that is one part of the process that is so
Daunting.
complicated.
Yeah.
And so again, let's kind of break it down and make it
Mm,
less complicated.
please.
First, with all my answers to every
Hmm.
question you will ask is I will say, um, really ignore all these outside pressures.
Hmm.
Parents face pressure, kids face pressure.
We
Think
do.
about your family,
Yeah.
think about your kid, think
Hmm.
about your finances,
Hmm.
right? So, the first thing I would say, and it's not in any order, these are all equally important, is to think about your learning style, right? What's your child's learning style, right? Are they
Mm-hmm.
someone who is very academic minded and they would thrive in a lecture kind of a setting? Are
Mm-hmm.
they someone who would be better off doing learning and putting it into practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are they
Mm-hmm.
someone who would be much better off if they were in a smaller setting where they
Mm-hmm.
get to know their professors and get to
Mm-hmm.
do some group work? Um,
Mm-hmm.
really thinking about those things, and thinking about the size of the school. If I could change, I know one of the reasons why I didn't do well in university was it was too big for me.
Mm.
It was too big for me. The classes were 300 students. My professor didn't know who I was,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If I had gone to a smaller school, that would have made all the difference in the world.
Such a
So
great point.
yeah, so that is the first thing is to, well, not the first thing, one of the
One of
things to,
them. Yeah.
the other is location. If
Mm.
you don't like to be in cold, don't go to Minnesota, right? Don't go to places that are cold. Like you're just going to be miserable, right? And weather does affect us, right? If it's December and you're studying for exams and it is so cold, you are not going to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
If you like to be in a busy city,
Mm.
find a big city. Don't go to somewhere remote where the closest town is hours away.
Mm-hmm.
Think
Wow.
again, who are you, right? Like I've
Mm-hmm.
realized living in big cities, and very crowded cities. I've lived in New York, I've lived in Karachi, Pakistan. These are big cities.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like big cities. I
Mm.
prefer smaller places.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So really, again, what are your preferences?
Wow.
And think about the program that you want to apply to. What is the area of study? What are you looking for? Are you looking for something that allows you to get some experience? There
Mm-hmm.
are co-op programs, internships, study abroad, programs in various disciplines.
Yeah.
It could be only in business or the arts, but I'm seeing that in sciences. One of my
Mm-hmm.
students applied to a kinesiology program. I think she's in her third year now. And starting this term, she's going to do a study abroad semester at a kinesiology university in the UK and get credit for her
For
degree.
that. Yeah.
So look at what programs offer the kinds of things you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and cost. Cost is really, really important.
Important. I think that's what we look at first before anything else. We're like, hey, the cost. But what you just said is so important. The weather, the location, the crowd of the classes and the school. We don't even look at that. We look at the cost first. Oh, you're gonna go to this college. Oh, go to a community college, it's cheaper.
Yeah. And
Get it.
what I will say is um for those whom the cost is just impossible sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
State schools are amazing. You know,
Mm.
they offer and smaller, in Canada, we differentiate between university and college, actually.
Yeah.
Um, and then some colleges become universities over time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
offer full
Mm-hmm.
degrees. But those smaller, less expensive schools, like a
Mm-hmm.
state school or a college in Canada, are amazing. There
Yeah.
are some, in fact, I am encouraging my son to go to one of our local colleges when he does go to school, because their programs are so much more current. The instructors are actually practitioners in their field, whereas
Look
at
at
the
that.
university, they might just they're researching and they haven't
Mm-hmm.
been working in the field in a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
And so, and it's much more affordable, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I would say, and my mom gave me this advice many years ago. She
Mm-hmm.
said, for your first degree,
Mm-hmm.
stay home and go to a
Okay.
school nearby.
I like
They're all the
that.
same pretty much for your first degree.
Yeah.
And you're exploring, right?
Yeah.
You might change along the way, you're
Yeah.
taking different classes. Do
Mm-hmm.
that. For your second degree, if you do a master's degree, go away. Find something that you're really interested in. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where you could spend the money,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that is what I ended up doing. I went to a school in Vancouver, my first degree, and I did my graduate school in New York. And I think don't discount these smaller, less expensive schools.
Yes, do not. I like what you just said about don't discount those smaller, less expensive schools because we discount a lot of Ivy League schools. We do
Mm,
that.
mhm.
People will be like, oh, my kid is applying to these schools around me, but all the Ivy League schools are kind of unreachable. They're a
Mhm.
no-go area for my kid. Should we discount those? Doesn't matter where we're from. Is this open to everybody?
It's open to everybody. This is how I feel. I do get students I had a student from Washington, D.C., who
Mm-hmm.
said, he came to me and he's like, okay, he had a spreadsheet. These are the schools I want to apply to. And he had all these stats. This is their acceptance rate. This is their acceptance rate with students in my school.
Right.
And I said, don't even look at all of that.
Mhm.
What is that going to do for you? You can't control any of this. They're not a guarantee. Just apply.
Right. Just
Just
apply.
apply and then see what happens,
Yeah.
right? If you get accepted, that's then when you start making choices. You look at all the different schools you get accepted to. You
Mm-hmm.
look at the cost, you look at the programs, you look at
Mm-hmm.
all, then you make those decisions. But why
Mm-hmm.
start worrying about something you
Mm-hmm.
have no control over? Will I
Mm-hmm.
get accepted to an Ivy League school? Is it for me? No one in my family has gone. No one in my school has
Mm-hmm.
gone.
Mm-hmm.
Just get rid of that,
Mm-hmm.
throw that thinking away and
Mm-hmm.
just apply.
Mm-hmm.
Put your best application forward,
Mm-hmm.
even if you feel you don't have the grades.
Mm-hmm.
There
I
are
love that.
many, many stories of students with 4.0 averages applying to some of these very competitive Ivy League schools
Mhm.
that don't get in
I don't get
because
it.
they don't have other things because they haven't had time to do
Mhm.
other things. To get a 4.0 average, you need to be studying all the
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
They haven't been able to, do extracurricular activities. And so
Mhm.
schools, we haven't touched on this, when they are looking at who they want to accept,
Mhm.
they are looking for students who can fit within their community, their school
Mm.
community, and can contribute to the community. So grades really show that you're academically prepared
Mhm.
to go through the rigors of school. These other things, the extracurriculars, show your character, show, let's say you are big on community service and
Mhm. Mhm.
school is also really big on community service. They're going to want to
I
accept.
want to.
And
Yeah.
so there are many stories where you can go online and see students who've had 4.0 averages and not been accepted
Wow.
in one of these.
I love that. One of the colleges I reached out to my son last year, the professor said that what I see you do online, my third year students have not done.
Hmm.
So that's a good example of he might not have the grades, but he has the skills already in sports broadcasting, in sport analysis, and this professor sent his book to my son and said, you're the youngest person ever to probably read this book about sports
That's
analysis.
amazing.
So
Yeah, it shows
that's
the
a
passion.
yeah, that's an eye opener to me. So the grades, and again, I'm not that parent who says you have to be an A student. I'm that parent who says, what do you want to do? What's your interest? And I tell you, listening to you here today, Tasneem, I think if my son wants to take a gap year, I would encourage it.
Excellent.
Just plan with it and plan with somebody like you and get this, to work. And now
Yep.
let's talk a little bit about the application process and the finances that go with it. When you're applying, you're helping students navigate this very daunting and tedious and complicated process, helping them to see some calm and light through it. Do you help them with their financial application as well? Because if I want to go to an Ivy League college, my parents can't afford it. I'm looking at how I can get scholarship. Is that something you also do in your work with them?
Yeah, so getting financial aid and scholarships is actually harder to do than applying to university or college, right? There's a lot of work that goes into it. And so what I really like to do is I like to start with students in the last half of grade 11 on
Mm-hmm.
their applications, right? Figuring out what they want to study, where they want
Mm-hmm.
to apply. And applications don't change much.
Mm-hmm.
Like application, part of the application, there will be an essay or essays that they need to write. Schools don't have the time to keep changing these essays because then they have
Mm-hmm.
to change the rubric for which they
Mm-hmm.
are scored on. So they're
Mm-hmm.
usually the same. In the States, you've got the common application with,
Mm-hmm.
6 or 7 essay prompts and you choose one.
Mm-hmm.
You can start working on that early on, right? So that when it's time you get into grade 12, you can start focusing on scholarships. You can
Mm-hmm.
start looking at what are the scholarships out there. There are many databases out there. There is actually a lot of money out there
Mm-hmm.
that is not claimed because people
Mm-hmm.
don't know about it. People
Mm-hmm.
are looking at these really big scholarships. There are very few, if any, full scholarships nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There are some bigger scholarships out there. There are also a lot of smaller scholarships, and every
Mm-hmm.
little bit counts. A scholarship of $500 here, $1,000 here, that adds up,
That's
right?
all. Yeah.
And so, looking at what scholarships are you eligible for,
Mm-hmm.
you apply. You could, let's say, and it could be just really random even, a photo, a camera brand might be giving a scholarship. And you might not have to be wanting to study photography or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But your application is taking a bunch of pictures, and sharing that with them, right? Another one might be write an essay, right, about a
Mm-hmm.
particular topic for a particular organization. And that's the application, right? And then there are some bigger ones. And so, yes, I work with students to look and find those scholarships.
This
Um,
is great.
and how do you find them? And there's just so many out there. And
Yeah.
it takes time to go
Takes
through
time.
are you eligible for, and so we work through that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But first, let's start with those applications, right? And then look at those scholarships as well. And financial
You have
aid.
a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this application into colleges and just the advice that you give parents and the students. Let me read a few kind words that I found on your website. People have been so grateful to you for what you've done. This person, Natalie, who is in grade 11, writes this about you from Maryland, USA. She says, Tasneem helped me keep my mindset in check during the entire program and keep on top of all the things I need to do for college application to meet the deadlines. Tasneem helped me become confident in who I am and what I have to offer the world. Wow. I am forever grateful to Tasneem for her experience, insight, and support. Now, when I read this, I feel like this is somebody who did not really have an experience, a portfolio of what they want to bring forth to the college. For that student who is not an art student, who doesn't have that portfolio. For my son, he has his website, his YouTube channel. You can see what he's been doing. He can get into your program because he has the skills already. For that who is lost, they have some students don't take part in any event, in any activity. I see like this somebody you helped to create something out of who they are in order to apply to a college and they get to know who they are thanks to you.
Yeah, no, Natalie, I remember her very, very well.
Mm,
And, she had an idea probably of what she wanted to do. She wanted to
mm,
be a teacher. And she didn't really know why. I think maybe in her family there were some teachers, but she felt like maybe this is something she'd like to do.
mm,
As we worked on her application,
mm,
and specifically the essay parts, those are the places where you've got to be personal. You
Mm-hmm.
are not talking about your grades and your academic achievements. The school
Mm-hmm.
wants to know who you are beyond your grades.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked with her, once a week and
Mm-hmm.
first getting to know her, um, talking about what she does outside of school, whether it's structured or not structured, who she is. And I am able as an outsider to say, wow, this is really interesting about you. Tell me more about
Yeah.
this, right?
Yeah.
We all need that, right? We
Mm-hmm.
all need a mentor. We all need a coach. I myself have a coach for my business,
Mm-hmm.
right? A coach needs a coach. Everyone
Mm-hmm.
needs that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in the end, after a few months, she was able to put together her essay for the Common Application for in the US.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote a story. It was not something she ever thought she would share.
Wow.
Through our conversations, I encouraged her to share it because I thought it was very powerful. And she told the story of when she came out to her mother
Mm-hmm.
and the struggle she
Mm-hmm.
had with that and the challenge. And more importantly, how she grew from that.
Mm-hmm.
And she was able to connect it with teaching because she wanted to make sure that her classroom was going to be a safe space for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
for anyone and everyone. She was able to remember that she started a pride club in her school. Okay. Maybe it hadn't been this huge club, but that was something that she was
Something.
passionate
Yeah.
about. But it was through these conversations that we were able to get to that point. And, parents come to me because they
Yeah.
want their kids to apply to college, meet the deadlines, get it all done.
Mm-hmm.
We do that. As she said, we met the deadlines,
Mm-hmm.
much more than that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like being a parent. You're doing certain things, but there's more that you're giving your kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's these life skills that are super important, that confidence, that ability to, you know, uh, be confident in who you are
Mm-hmm.
and say to people, this is who I am and this is
Mm-hmm.
what I want to do.
Yeah.
That is going to last her a
A
lifetime.
lifetime.
When we're working together, there is a commitment on the part of the student. They need to come
Mm-hmm.
every week or however we decide to the session. They need to do the work. Time management. They learn time management in this process. I remember I had a student and he was coming late to the first two sessions. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
we can't do that, right?
Yeah.
And I explained why. From then on, he never came late. In fact, he was early. I'd see him on the Zoom room a couple minutes before.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of every session, I'll say, okay, this is, what you need to do before the next session. I think it's going to take yourself, give yourself about 45 minutes, an hour, maximum an hour and a half. So I give them, a really good sense of how long they should spend.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, look at your calendar for the week. When can you put this in your calendar? And so they might
Mm-hmm.
say, well, you know what? I have an exam on this date, so I'm going to be studying this evening, but I can work on it when I get home after my exam and I'll put it in my calendar. And we do this every single week. So
Wow.
being able to manage your calendar and plan ahead is a huge life skill,
You're
right?
not just helping the students through an application process to get to college or to really experience who they want to be in life. You're helping them to become responsible adults.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
Exactly.
doing more than just helping them through academic coaching.
Yeah, definitely. It's they come in for one thing and they get so much more.
So much more. So
Mhm.
much more, Tasneem. And I have gotten so much more out of you today that we're running out of time. I feel like I could keep going, but I want to thank you so much for being here. And for those who have watched online, I see people popping in and out, but nobody asked a question to you. I hope when they come back, they can always ask questions later. We can find you online at tasneemdamji.com and also on LinkedIn. And
Right.
also, yeah, they can reach out to you and, you can work a session with them. I'm going to talk to my son about it. I'm going to have him watch this in full and see what he thinks because right now he is bent on football analysis, sport analysis. That's what it is. So
Mhm.
you never know. I just want to, because he is that is it.
Yeah.
But I've tried to like, what's your, second option? There seem to be none.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think for somebody like you can always help people come out of the box where they think they are and
Yes.
become bigger than what they really think they are.
Exactly. And I'd love your audience to know that I'm doing, and I think you're going to share this
Yes, I will.
notes that I'm doing a master class, a virtual master class on
Mhm,
January 14th.
mhm,
Um, and it is geared to grade 11 parents, but it can be any, anyone in high school, any parent of a high school student.
mhm,
Uh, where we're going to look at the power of extracurricular activities and their role in college applications and how you can help your teen reflect on what they're learning in those extracurricular activities. So some of what we talked about today.
mhm,
And if they're not able to make it, I know parents are leading busy lives, chauffeuring their kids to all kinds of activities and things
mhm,
like that.
mhm, mhm.
If they even just register, they will get a recording afterwards.
Okay.
So if you can put that in your comments or notes,
Yeah.
I'd love to have any of your audience at that
Yeah.
masterclass.
I'll do a short on that and put it separate so it's not that buried in all of this. Well, Tasneem, thank you so much. Again, I am that host who always gives an assignment to her guests. I did ask
Good.
you to bring a wise word or a proverb to share with us today. Do you have
Well,
one?
you did, and it's something that I've already talked about, but it is my wise words.
Mm-hmm.
And that is we are planning next steps. We're not planning the future. And my whole thing is about creating clarity, calm, and confidence. And if we're just thinking about the next steps, I hope that really reduces some of the pressure and stress that parents and students are feeling.
It does. See, listening to what you said just now made me think about my own life. When I was in secondary school in Cameroon, I always had one choice, become a journalist. And my father wanted me to be a lawyer, but that
Mhm.
didn't go his way. And I did my broadcasting. It worked for me. That was me planning my future. Today, I'm not practicing broadcasting. I'm still doing
Mhm.
it the way I am right now, but I'm working in a different field. So I would learn from you to plan next steps, not my future.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you so much, Tasneem. It's been an honor to have you on
Thank
Talk to Me
you.
Africa and have a wonderful, wonderful 2025.
You too. It was such a pleasure talking to you, and
Yeah.
I look forward to connecting with your audience.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.